Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And as promised, I am back with the final edition of Ariel Takes the Stand. And you guys know that we started this Ariel testimony about 5 videos ago. That's how long they had Ariel on this witness stand. And then, of course, I had my birthday, in the midst of all of this. And so I'm just now getting back to you with this final installment. I believe this is part 6. Before I get started, I wanted to say something, and not to be mean-spirited or anything, sort of lighthearted comment. For the people that's cussing me out in the comments, and you guys know if there are certain words that you use in the comments that will get your comment flagged and then gets tossed into a review bucket. Okay, but some of y'all are mad, okay, and your comment ain't showing on my page either because you're just rude for no reason. Keep in mind that I have said on multiple videos that after Ariel Clary took the stand on Monday, August 23rd, Judge Donnelly stopped the release of transcripts because she wanted to go through the transcripts and make sure that there was information contained in those documents that should not be released to the public, weren't released to the public. And so she wanted to read all the transcripts and redact parts of the conversations, and they were mainly sidebar conversations. So you're getting all of the testimony from Ariel. The parts that are redacted are sidebars that were held in absent of the jury. It was just the judge and the attorneys, and that happens a lot in real court. So there's no big conspiracy with Judge Donnelly trying to keep the information from us as we originally thought. It was basically her, protecting information that she didn't want to get out. That was conversations between her and the attorneys. And then the other thing was, so those were redacted those were held up until earlier this week. I believe the court reporter emailed me like Monday or Tuesday to say, hey, do you still want those transcripts? I can now give them to you. And so I was able to purchase those transcripts from her. And then I want to give a huge thank you to the subscribers who actually donated money to help me pay for those transcripts. I'm not giving their names because they didn't give me permission, but there was about 4 or 5 of you that made very nice donations, and we were able to come up, with the 400, I believe it was like 400 and some odd dollars that these final transcripts of Ariel talking came to. And so you're very much appreciated. Now, you guys were saying, you're taking too long to put the videos out. Other people have already released the transcripts. So if you know that other people have already released the transcripts, why are you harassing me about my timeliness? Because you done already heard the transcript. So it's the same transcript that I'm reading. So why are you mad at me? Because of the time that I put my transcript out, if you've already heard the transcript. Then number 2, y'all be out here binge watching television shows that came out 6 months ago. Other people have already watched the television shows, talked about the television shows, did recaps of the television shows, but you still go and watch the television show 6 months later. So why are you mad at me about the timeliness of the transcripts? So I just wanted to get that off my chest and say that, outside of YouTube, I do have a life. I do run a business. And so there will be times when news will come out and I can't bring you the news right away. Reading these transcripts, the case is still going on. And if you don't know, the court is not going to meet again until Thursday of next week. which by the time you see this video is actually going to be the week of. But so Thursday, the 5th, 6th, no, 6th, 7th, 8th. Court does not come back in until the 9th, I believe. The 9th and 10th, they're going to meet of this week. And then the prosecution is expected to rest their case in the middle of next week, or the week of the 13th, around the 15th. They'll be done. And then the defense will pick up and present their case. So, if all minds are clear, we're going to re-adjourn with the reading of testimony from Ariel Clary, and I promise you, this is the final video, okay? Okay. So, it picks up, says, we are ready to continue with the cross-examination of the witness by Mr. Canick. The clerk, the witness, is reminded she's still under oath. The witness, who is Ariel Clary, says, yes, ma'am. And then cross-examination continues by Mr. Canick. Good morning. Good morning. Now, after we recessed last night and until this morning, have you had an opportunity to speak with any members from the government? No, I have not. Oh, let me put a pin there. So, about what I was talking about, the people coming at me about this, I want to use this as a reminder that there are certain words that if you say in your comments, it's going to throw your comment into a review folder. And so nobody can see your comment until I release it from the review folder. So if you're cursing at me, if you're using derogatory terms, that type of stuff, is not going to make it into the regular comments where everybody can see them. You're going to end up in a bucket, okay, that I have to look at. And so as I'm skimming through those comments, most likely I'm just going to delete your comment if you're being rude and offensive. So let's keep that in mind. And then if that's why you haven't seen your comment that I posted. So let's get back to this. So Ariel says, no, I have not. And then Canick, okay, now, you and your father were shopping a book deal concerning your allegations here. Am I correct? Correct. And the person that you were working with was Stacy Brown. I don't believe I met before with Stacy Brown. You don't believe you met with Stacy Brown before? No, I never met with him. You know who Stacy Brown is, right? Yes, I do. Your father met with him. I don't know. You had an agent? I did, yes. What's your agent's name? I actually don't remember her name, but she is a young woman from LA. Donnelly, just make sure you keep your voice. Lord, when these people please talk loud, they know Donnelly cannot hear. And then I think it was Stephanie P, one of the commenters, Stephanie P, pointed out that Donnelly keeps talking about how nobody can hear what Canick and the witness is saying, right? But the court reporter been typing everything the entire time. Like, we haven't missed the beat. The court reporter has never said, Judge, I can't hear. Can you ask him to talk up? Because she's typing everything. Even when Donnelly is saying, please speak up, she types that right into the machine or whatever she's using. So, Donnelly, we know it is you with the hearing problem, okay? So, anyway, Donnelly says, then Canick picks up and says, you know the name Charlene? Yes, sir. And she was your agent, am I correct? Yes, sir. When was it that you started shopping this book with Stacy Brown? I don't remember. Was it in 2019? I don't remember. Your Honor, I'm just going to show her something electronically to see if it will refresh her recollection. Of course. I'm going to show you this and you can look at the top to the bottom and see if it refreshes your recollection as to when it was that you were trying to shop this book deal. Okay. Does it refresh your recollection? It does, yes. It was sometime before February 5th, 2020. Am I correct? The date on that says February 5th, 2020. Right. Well, on this, by the time you had received this, he was sending you back a draft manuscript. Am I correct? I don't recall. Look at this document. Then there was a pause. Having looked at that, does it refresh your recollection that by February 5th, 2020, you had already started receiving draft manuscript proposals? Yes. Now, yesterday we spoke about your mother asking you to take photos of Robert and yourself where you could possibly exploit him on a future date. Do you remember us talking about that? Yes, I do. Now, there came a point in time that you stopped taking the pictures and doing things to possibly exploit Robert because you felt as though you were betraying his trust, correct? Yes. Now, yesterday we offered Defense Exhibit S into evidence. I want you to read them to the jury, and can you read them loud and slowly? Yes. All of them? Yes. Okay, Pops, you didn't tell Mommy that you used to FaceTime and call Rob. Let me stop you there. When you say Pops, who are you referring to? My father. Go ahead, please. Okay, sorry about that. I had to go get something to drink. My throat is so heavy today. Okay, so Canic, let me stop you there. When you say Pops, who are you referring to? My father. Go ahead, please. Pops, you tell Mommy that you used to FaceTime and call Rob and have hour-long conversations, happy and jolly and never upset. You didn't even tell Mommy all the things you had me trying to do to blackmail Rob. It's a shame because both of you were very happy, but y'all started listening to and then it's redacted, and joined them. Let's stop there. Who are then it's redacted, you're referring to? Oh, so they're saying the savages, so we can figure that one out. So the redacted part says, who are the savages you're referring to? And then Azrael says, Joy's parents. Joy, one of Robert's living girlfriends? Yes, okay. They found other exes and out of curiosity told them what to do and what to say. There's an arrow pointing up, but I really can't make out what it's saying. You're literally taking illegal actions when you know you've done wrong as parents. What really makes me angry is that all of you could still be in my life, but your actions and choices shows that's not what you care about. All I have to say is this, and all I have to say is this. If and when you want to be in my life, you will be. And if you don't want, you won't. But no matter what you do, I will forever be deeply in love with Robert, and I will forever spend my life with him and continue to create beautiful moments and memories. I am not going to sacrifice or ruin my happiness just to appease you guys. Y'all have depressed yourselves, stressed yourselves out, aged yourselves, and made yourselves so miserable chasing an idea that you have covered up would never come to life. You think I'm happy that y'all aren't in my life? No, but I would not allow y'all to think you can talk to me whenever you want while doing interviews bashing Robert. I love this man. And Ma, I pray you would never let another person bash Pops without standing up for him, and vice versa, because that is true, genuine love. Then the next letter says, I am hurt and devastated. I cannot see my family because of you guys. You guys have put me in this position, and then you're angry when I don't reach out. And then the next letter. Ma and Pops, not only am I devastated, but I'm crushed from everything that you two have done and how you decided to go about this. None of this should be happening, and you all could have put a stop to this, but you decided to join in to get some money. If you are working with him and making money in any kind of way, you would be okay with me being with Robert. And that's the sad part, that you need money to be happy from me. Both of you knew where the studio was, and for nearly 5 years. I can count how many times you've tried to see me in one hand. None of you did interviews for free. Both of you took money, and you don't need money to be a caring parent. And if someone paid you right now to do an interview, you'd do it. All that you've done and all that you're still doing, where has it got you? Definitely not closer to me, nor have I wanted to see you guys because of it. And I still don't want to. I'm still living my life happy with Robert, while you two are making yourselves more miserable every day. You don't even have to. Ma, when I was 17, you were telling me to take as many pictures and videos with this man so you could blackmail him and use it against him in the future. Exactly what you're trying to do now. You knew this past and you tried to use it against him by making me the bait. You continued to try and push me onto this man. You really made me feel like a hoe and a prostitute by saying those words to me, and I went along because I was trying to please you, but you don't know how terrible you made me feel as a mother. You dropped me off at 3 in the morning and didn't care if I was with you or not. You wanted me to be alone with him, and you know that. You have texted very threatening things saying, since you're fucking my daughter, you need to send $10,000 to this bank account every month. You threatened me and him personally. You said we need to send you a food check, and by this, which is not how you act or things you say as a mother or parent. I don't know if you know, but I'm sure you do by now. But I came to Florida to, and then it's redacted. And then Kanik asks, who's, and then it's redacted. And then, oh, so she's talking about her brother. What's his name? All of them begin with the A. What is that boy's name? Oh, I can't think of her brother's name. But anyway, his name begins with an A, and she's talking about her brother when she said what she said above. And so then Kanik tells her to go ahead. And then she says, and confide in him, and I was totally heartbroken. All of the things you have said and told him, that isn't even true. The reason I don't and can't see you all, and then it says blank or even blank. So she's talking about more family members. And then Getty says, one moment. And then Kanik, Your Honor, may we approach the witness and let the witness. And then Donnelly says, I beg your pardon. Kanik, may we approach the witness, the government and I. Donnelly, sure. Thank you. You can continue, please. Because of y'all and everything y'all have caused, you guys didn't tell my brother that y'all were texting Rob and that I'm grown. I can do what I want and make my own choices. Then the next letter says, I've thought about what you said and I do want to fix us. I just do not want to delete my entire email, so hopefully we can figure out another way to build trust. The more I think of it, the more I realize I have to delete. It's not that I have anything to hide, because I don't. So if you do not feel comfortable with that, then we need to figure something else out. So I'm sorry if I'm not the woman you want to marry or do anything with, because I'm choosing to disagree, but I am not angry. I am okay with my choice. We just need to talk about what this means and where we stand because of this. And then Kanik, now that's the letter you wrote to Robert. Yes. Read the next one. Okay, the next one says, I really just need a moment to gather myself. I came back because I wanted to fix this, but now we're stuck again. Let me stop you there. That's a letter to Robert as well? Yes. And when you said I came back, what are you talking about? The defendant convinced me to come back. You were away, am I correct? You were away from Robert for less than 24 hours. No, that's not my question. My question is, were you away from him? Yes, I was. And you were away from him and you went where? Back to the defendant. No, You were in Florida, were you not? These two letters could be different times. No. My question is, when you left Robert for 24 hours, as you said, and you said he convinced you to come back, you went to Florida. Is that correct? I left the defendant multiple times. That's not my question. My question is, when you left him, the 24-hour period that you just spoke about, you were in Florida, right? These two letters are not the same, Donnelly. So why don't, and then Azriel, time period, then Donnelly, why don't you refer her if there's more than one time? Do you have a particular time in mind? And then Azriel replied, yes. I think Donnelly was talking to Connick, but Azriel is answering the questions. So then Donnelly says, just let me finish. Do you have a particular time in mind that you want to direct the witness to? Connick, yes. So then Connick says, the letter that you just read where you said that you could fix this, that you want to fix this. Donnelly, are those dated, by the way? Connick, no. Donnelly, okay. And Azriel, I don't know which argument this was after, but the bottom line is that there was an argument. You left Robert and went home. Am I correct? Only on one occasion, yes. I didn't ask you how many occasions. I asked you whether or not you left Robert and went home. Yes. And home was with your family. Am I correct? Yes. Okay, go to the next letter. I can tell this is going to be a while before anything gets resolved, and I just don't care anymore. I'm so done. I'm not happy, and I'm tired of running in circles, not being good enough, not noticing what you want me to. Every other day, something is going wrong, and if I'm doing something wrong, and I'm tired of going through that, I don't want that kind of relationship. Now, you were apart from Robert when you wrote that letter. Pardon me? Were you apart? Were you separated from Robert when you wrote that letter? I was not. Okay, you were in the same household when you wrote that letter? I was, yes. And you were expressing to him that you were tired of the relationship, didn't want the relationship. Am I correct? I did, yes. And did you leave? I don't recall. Now, I'm going to ask you to look at Defense T for identification. May I have the other document? Do you recognize that document? Yes, I do. What do you recognize that document to be? A screenshot from my Snapchat account. Okay, Your Honor, I'm going to offer Defense T into evidence, but I will want to redact certain information from it. Okay, was this something we looked at yesterday? No, I don't think so. Geddes, I believe it is. Connick, it is. Okay. Donnelly, any objection? Geddes, no, Your Honor. Donnelly, let's make sure we get that redacted. That's in evidence. Then Connick, thank you. I'll redact it before I ask her to read. And so Defense Exhibit T, so marked, pause. And then Connick picks up and says, I ask you to read this, please. Baby, I never been... Could you read it louder and slower? Okay. Baby, I never been held against my will. Wrong person. You need to stop reading the tabloids. You sent that? You posted that? Am I correct? I sent this to someone personally. Do you recall the date that you sent this? Yes, that was immediately after I had left the defendant in October. Thank you. Now, you testified and spoke to us yesterday about a situation when you were in Las Vegas. Do you remember telling us about that? Yes, I do. And I think you testified and told us that you were staying at the Mandalay Bay. Yes, I was. And there came a point in time when you sent your mother a text saying that everyone was having fun and you were in the room. Do you remember that text? I do, yes. Now, Mandalay Bay had a 21 age requirement for the casino area. Am I correct? Yes. And basically, you were traveling with Robert at that time. Am I correct? Yes. So he was the adult that was a part of that and responsible for your well-being. Am I correct? Correct. Now, you testified and told us about a situation where you told Robert that you were 17 and he sent you back home. Am I correct? Yes, he did. In fact, he sent you back home the very next morning. Am I correct? Yes, he did. Now, and you went back down to Florida and you spoke with your mother. Am I correct? Yes, I did. And your father. Am I correct? Yes. And you said that they executed a document giving someone else guardianship over you. Now, am I correct? Correct. And as you sit here today, do you recall the name of the person that they gave guardianship to? Yes, I do. What's the person's name? Objection. She gave someone guardianship, right? Yes, she did. And before giving guardianship to this person, they never had any conversation with this person. Am I correct? No. Okay. They never FaceTimed this person. Am I correct? No, they did not. They never gave this person any details of their expectations of them with regard to you. Am I correct? No. There was no interface whatsoever between your parents and this person that gave guardianship to. Am I correct? No, I'm not correct. No, to my knowledge, no, I don't know. Now, you testified and told us that Robert had a rule. Robert, according to you, you've had to, when you travel with him or on a tour bus, you had to knock on the door before you came out of the bathroom. Do you remember telling us that? That is correct. And that was the tour bus. Am I correct? Yes, that is correct. And that bus withdrawn, were you the only person who had to knock on the door before coming out of the bathroom? Every girlfriend had to knock. Well, everybody had to knock. Am I correct? Donnelly, I'm sorry. Did you say to go in or to come out of the bathroom? To come out. Oh, I see. Okay. And then Ariel replied, yes. Okay, everyone had to knock because the rule was put in place because there's a microwave on the bus. Am I correct? There's a microwave on the bus. There's a refrigerator on the bus, right? Yes. And people would walk around with hot food and the door would swing out. Am I correct? All right, Panic, do your thing. So Ariel replied, yes. So that policy was for safety, am I correct? It was not for safety. It was not for safety? Now you testified and told the jury yesterday that there was someone, one of Robert's girlfriends, according to you, that he dragged by the hair. Do you remember telling us that? Yes. Who was the girlfriend? Neek. Now, you recall at dinners when you were home with Robert and the girlfriends, you would often eat dinner together. Am I correct? Yes. And Robert would play the piano while the girlfriends ate. Am I correct? Not that I can recall are you saying every single time or one particular time? He would play the piano when you would have dinner, when you ate. No, he would not. He never did that. Once he did that. Yes. Do you recall who was there that one time? I recall the defendant playing the piano for just me and him. Oh, just you and him. Yes. Now, you wanted to be his primary girlfriend. Am I correct? I did not. You did not? You never told him that? The defendant put me on a pedestal. Oh, so yesterday he didn't put you on a pedestal, but today he put you on a pedestal. Objection. Overruled. I can't stop what someone else does. And I had to catch myself. Now, you testified and told us yesterday, withdrawn. When you were living with Robert, he had you handle his checking accounts, checking books. Am I correct? He had an accountant. That's not my question. My question is, did you handle his checking books, his personal checking? No. Did Robert give you $5,000 a month in your Chase account? It wasn't. Can you rephrase that, because I'm not understanding? Did you receive $5,000 a month from Robert when you were living with him being deposited in your Chase account? Yes. And Robert also took care of your Uber and Lyft account. Am I correct? Yes. And now, did you testify, told the jury that Robert prevented you from going to work? Yes, he did. What job did you want to work? I told him that I wanted to work any job. What skills did you have? I had never worked a job before. And you asked your brother to help you get a job. Am I correct? I don't recall that. Isn't it a fact that you asked, and then it says the brother's name, to get you a job paying around $28 per month? No, I don't remember that. And isn't it a fact that the brother's name responded to you and told you, Donnelly, can I see the parties at the sidebar? We don't need the court reporter. So there was a discussion off the record. Canick, may I continue, Your Honor? Donnelly, yes, go ahead. Canick, while we look for that, I'll move on to something else. Donnelly, okay. So then Canick says, now, you testified and told the jury yesterday that Mr. Kelly did not celebrate holidays. Do you remember telling us that? The clerk, the jurors can't hear you. Oh, Lord Jesus. See, the clerk finally spoke out, okay? But she can hear because she's steady typing. Okay. So, Canick, do you remember telling us yesterday about Mr. Kelly not celebrating the holidays? I believe I said they were delayed, but yes. Well, do you recall a text exchange between you and one of your friends, and the friend asked you, what did Mr. Kelly get you for Christmas? I believe that is something I could have talked about, yes. And do you remember telling your friend that you got a lot of clothes, shoes, heels, sneakers, the new Jordans that dropped on Christmas too, and a big ass new iPad Pro? Yes, I do. Those were Christmas gifts, am I correct? Yes, they were. Now, I'm going to ask. I asked you yesterday about trips to the beach with Mr. Kelly. Remember me asking you that? Yes. You said you didn't go. No, we did go. You did go? Your Honor, I'm going to ask this to be marked as Defense Exhibit X for identification. Sure. Okay, I'm showing you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit X for identification. Do you recognize it? Yes, I do. What do you recognize it to be? It is me and the defendant. Where? At a beach up north, and I had found... You found this beach? Yes, I did. And you mentioned to him that you wanted to go? Okay, I had to take a quick pause there. So let's pick back up with Canick. And you mentioned to him that you wanted to go. After months, yes, I did. Well, my question is, did you tell him that you found a beach and you wanted to go to the beach? I did, yes. And he took you to the beach? Yes. Your Honor, may we publish to the jury? Sure. I'm going to ask that this be marked Defense W for identification. Do you recognize it? Yes, I do. What do you recognize it to be? Me and the defendant. In this picture? Yes. I'm going to offer it as Defense Exhibit W. Geddes, no objection. Donnelly, all right, that's in evidence. Defense Exhibit W, so marked. Canick, may we publish? Donnelly, yes. And so for those of you who haven't been listening to the previous videos, when they ask to publish, that means that they're putting it up on display for the jury to see what it is that he's talking about. So Canick, Your Honor, may we have a minute or two to just figure out something? Donnelly, sure. There's a pause in the proceedings, and then they're back. And Connick, I'm going to ask you. Donnelly, put on your microphone. Y'all just don't know how this discussion about this microphone and can't hear just be making me laugh. So anyway, Connick continues. What's been marked as defense U for identification, and ask you to take a look at these pages and let me know if you recognize them. You don't need to read them, just see if you recognize them. Yes, I do recognize this. What do you recognize it to be? This is my handwriting, if that's what you're asking me. Well, is it something you wrote? Yes. I'm going to offer it defense U for identification into evidence. Donnelly, any objection? Geddes, I just want to see what it is. No objection. Connick, I'll spare the reading this time. Donnelly, okay. So defense exhibit U was received into evidence. And then Connick continues, let me show you what's been marked as defense exhibit Y for identification. Do you recognize it? Yes, I do. What do you recognize it to be? My handwriting. Well, is it a letter that you wrote? Yes. I offer this defense exhibit Y into evidence. No objection. Geddes, no objection. Sorry. Donnelly, okay, it's in evidence. Defense exhibit Y was received in evidence. I'm going to ask you to read again loudly and slowly. I'll sit while she reads. Donnelly, how long will it be? Connick, it depends on how long it takes her to read it. Donnelly, it's in evidence anyway. Can I just see counsel? I don't need the court reporter. 1 second. Discussion was had off the record. Donnelly, all right. The lawyer wants you to read the document, okay? All right. Ariel, brother, the reason I haven't been texting or calling you is because of a few reasons. Number one is because I had to take my time and really think about everything Mom Pops has done, do try and ruin happiness. Number two, I came at the Florida to see you because I want to give us a chance as brother and sister to see if I could trust you and confide in you. Seeing as though I can't do that with Mom Pops, on top of all of that, I really had missed you. But none of that means anything if you are going to act like them and try to talk me out of being happy, because that is exactly what I am with Robert. And no matter what, that you should be respected, even if someone doesn't like it. Sorry. And no matter what, that should be respected, even if someone doesn't like it. You have idea what Ma and Pops tried to do to Robert in the beginning. They literally used me to lure him in so that they could blackmail him and do all the shit that you're doing right now. And the reason I know this is because I was getting ready. Connick, could you slow down a little? Geddes, objection. Donnelly, why don't you let me manage that part? Okay, sorry. Okay, keep reading, but don't go so fast. Azrael, okay. And I'm going to back up a little further. They literally used me to lure him in so they could blackmail him and do all the shit that they're doing right now. And the reason is because I was getting ready to go along with their BS as well. But the only reason I was going to do it is because I liked him and thought he was interesting. But once I came across him, once I came around him and got to know him, my friendship and love for him became genuine because he showed me nothing but love, excuse me, and respect. He's a real person. He's fun, and he has nothing but respectful when he came to meet Ma and Pops and even you. But unfortunately, Ma and Pops never changed their minds or hearts about what it is that they wanted from him. Because Ma continued to nag me about sleeping with him and trying to get me to take as many pictures and videos as I could of him. and me because she said to me that she wanted to use those pictures and videos to blackmail him in case he didn't want to do what they asked of him. My pops even told me in the beginning to lie about my age because they said if he knows that I'm 17, he wouldn't even mess with me at all. So I lied and said I was 18. As a matter of fact, Ma told me to go to his hotel room wearing something tight and sexy, something that made me look grown, and she wanted me to be all over him sexually and stuff like that. But honestly, when I got there, I felt stupid when I walked in the room because he wasn't even coming on to me. So I started switching up the plan and telling him about myself. We talked about music and I told him that I sing, but nothing serious. Because even though my pops want that for me, I wasn't 100% sure that that's what I wanted for me. However, while we were talking, someone started banging on the door, and when Rob looked through the peephole, he said it was 4 policemen outside the door. Then he let them in, and they asked me my name and how old I was. I gave them my name, and I lied and told them I was 18. The reason I did that is because Mom Pops had already told me to tell Robert I was 18, and which I did. So I would have sounded stupid telling the police I was 17 right in front of Rob. So they told me my mom and dad was looking for me and was worried for me. And I knew right away that was a lie because they're the ones that told me to go to his room. They also told the police on speakerphone I was 18 and old enough to make my own decisions, which is why the police left and there was no problem. That's another reason I know they were trying to set him up, but after the police came in the room and saw that there wasn't any wrongdoings going on, my pops realized that their plan pretty much didn't work. So obviously they decided to back off of their plan at that time. Brother, I'm telling you the truth. I cannot make this up. Then later on, after I started getting to know him, and what I mean by that is becoming friends, I admit I started developing feelings for him and went from being excited to be around R. Kelly, the celebrity, to falling in love with Robert, the person. And even though I wanted to have sex with him and actually hinted towards that a few times, I backed up from it because he was not showing the same interest. And I told Ma that on several occasions, but she just kept on pushing me, just trying to make me have some type of sexual relationship with him. And the more that happened, the more I started feeling like a hoe because I started realizing that my own parents were just using me and my vagina to get money from R. Kelly. And when it finally hit me hard, it broke my heart into pieces. And I decided that day while I was in Chicago to tell him the truth, even though I was scared that he might not want to be around me again. It was something I knew I had to do because I felt really nasty on the inside. I also realized that at that moment is that I am nothing like my pops. So I told him I was 17 and how my parents convinced me to tell him I was 18. He was not mad about it. For one, because we hadn't done anything sexually. But he did tell me I had to go home right away. And I cried so bad. And the only reason he was able to calm me down is by telling me that the only way I could possibly be there in Chicago is that my parents were up here with me where they signed some kind of consent saying that it was okay for me to be here. So long story short, brother, I told my pops that, and they didn't even hesitate. They took me to Florida Education Department to get me pulled out of school and enrolled on to online school. Okay, well, hold up. Let's put a P in here. Because, child, this story done switched up. Because I thought in one of those interviews that the Clarys did, it was either on our local TV station, WFLA, or it was when they were interviewed by those people with the YouTube channel. And it was a video that I talked about, like in the beginning when all this happened. I think right after he was arrested, they did this interview. And I can't think of the people's name. But anyway, it was a couple, a man and a wife, black lady. And it was like a dark room, like a charcoal gray setting or something. In any event, they said that Ariel pulled herself out of school. And in that video, I said, how can a 17-year-old remove themselves from school, withdraw themselves from school? Like, you can only do that if you've been emancipated, like you've emancipated yourself from your parents and you're now considered a legal adult at 16, which is something I know you can do here in Florida. Not sure about other states, but now that we're finding out that Ariel went to her parents and her parents agreed to put her into virtual school. So just a whole bunch of lies going on. And now she, all that about licking the butt and all that stuff, she telling us wasn't true, that she hadn't even slept with the man. So I told y'all in a past video that Ariel might be setting everybody up. And look like that is coming to fruition, that she gonna get the last laugh in all of this. But let's continue. So she says, long story short, brother, I told my and pops that, and they didn't even hesitate. They took me to Florida Education Department to get me pulled out of school and enrolled on to online school. They then took me to the county's clerk office, got the consent form signed and notarized by the state of Florida, which said they give their parental rights away for me to be in Chicago. And I remember being mad and happy at the same time. And the reason I was mad is because I was saying to myself, what kind of parents would sign their 17-year-old daughter away to be in Chicago by myself, to be with someone that they never met or even got to know? And the reason I was happy was because honestly, by this time, even though Rob didn't know it, but I had fallen in love with him and I wanted to be around him for that reason. And seeing what Ma and Pops had done to me, having a clear understanding of them trying to use me and for their own financial gain, I wanted to be far away from them as possible, because all Ma would do every time I talked on the phone is threaten me, curse me out. She would tell me that they were going to destroy R. Kelly's career through social media, talk shows, or whatever they could do if I didn't start sending them money. And at first, I didn't tell Robert stuff in fear that he would send me back home, because I knew he would not want to deal with all of that. Pops actually started asking R to use his lighting company to do his shows, but Rob told him he already had a lighting company that he had been using for 20 years, and they already knew his show, and Pops didn't like that at all. Then Ma and Pops came to me and tried to get me to convince Robert to team up with them and put his name and logo on a dildo that had a Bluetooth and would play his music while people had sex. And I told them I was not going to talk to him about that, because I was uncomfortable having that kind of convo with him. And besides, I thought it was a ridiculous idea. So they decided to bring dildos to his show. After his show was over, Ma and Pops was backstage with R. Kelly, and Ma pulled a dildo out in front of me and everybody, trying to get Rob to sign a letter of consent about being in business with them. And out of respect for them, because they were my parents, he took the paper but did not sign it. And later on told them he didn't feel comfortable being a part of something like that. And that's another thing they did not like. And I remember Ma telling Robert and me that she didn't care if we had sex or whatever, because I'm grown and can do whatever I want. And by this time, I'm 18. She said, just let her be a driver, and that didn't happen at that time. I had been to multiple shows and living in Chicago, but at the same time, I was continuing to be threatened by Ma because she was not getting any money from Robert or me. I told her several times while I was even 18 that we were not even doing anything sexually, and she would just get really angry with me when I would tell her that. She got so angry that I don't even think she realized that she was texting all of those threats and what she would do. But she even texted Rob, since you're fucking my daughter, you need to send $20,000 to this bank account and then $10,000 every month after. Brother, I don't need to say anything else at this point, except after they realized that they were not going to get any money out of him or me, that's when they started teaming up with the Savages and started telling all of these lies on social media about R. Kelly. They started digging in his past, finding old girlfriends that are mad that things didn't work out between R. Kelly and them. Let me stick a pin here. I find it interesting how she goes from R. Kelly to Rob to Robert throughout this letter. Like, that's really weird. You don't do that. Like, you have a name for a person and you stick with that name. Like, you don't switch it up and go, oh, Robert, Donald. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of like a writing expert could explain her mentality when she's doing this. But to me, that's really odd how she switches from Rob to Robert to R. Kelly throughout a single letter. So anyway, she goes on to say, R. Kelly and them playing the concerned parent's role, acting like their daughter is missing, held captive in sex cults and all the other lies. They started promising all of these broke-ass females from his past that they were going to get money with deals. And then Connick says, thank you. Now, during that time that you stayed with Robert and the other girlfriends, were there wellness checks by the police? Yes, there was. Wellness checks in Chicago? Yes. Wellness checks in Atlanta? Yes. And wellness checks, that's where someone from law enforcement comes. They speak to you privately, and they either take action or they leave. Am I correct? It was never private, but yes, you're correct. And you had also wellness check done by Homeland Security. Am I correct? I don't remember. I have nothing further. Donnelly, okay. Redirect examination. Geddes, yes. Connick, I do have one I offer. Donnelly, go ahead. Connick, no, this was something the court, I think, reserving a ruling with respect to the videos H and I. I'm going to offer them into evidence at this time. And then Geddes asks, the audios? And then Connick, yes, the audio and videos as well. Do you have an objection? That's Donnelly. Geddes, as long as I can redirect on it, it's fine. Donnelly, I thought she admitted that she made the statements. That's why I'm not sure why they would come into evidence. But, Mr. Connick, I think we would have. I don't want to continue discussing it. Donnelly, okay, me either. Let me reserve on it. I don't think it has to come in at the moment. Connick, all right. And then Geddes, Your Honor, can we have a sidebar for just 2 minutes to discuss something about redirect? Donnelly, sure. Let's have the court reporter. And then the following occurred at sidebar. Geddes, I just wanted to flag 3 things for the court that I believe either you have already ruled on or the defense definitely opened the door for us. First, on cross-examination, defense counsel asks, did your parents tell you to tell him that you were 18 years old? Yes or no? No, they did not. I think she needs to be able to explain why she said she was 18 and what, and so it's going to open the door to his past, which I believe defense counsel has now done. Connick, no. Donnelly, hold on. When you say open the door to his past, there are certain references in the, I can't remember which. Connick, yes. Donnelly, so many, but there's certainly a reference that the parents were exploiting whatever his past was. I think it's, as I ruled before, I think it is relevant to explain why she told him she was 18. I don't think you can dispute that. I think where we might part company or where you part company is exactly what you're going to ask, and that's what I would like to know. Geddes, I'm only going to ask, why did you tell the defendant that you were 18 and not 17? Donnelly, and what she is going to say. Geddes, she is going to say because she was aware of his past involving CP. Donnelly, CP? Geddes, I asked her in preparation for this, and that's what she said. Donnelly, okay. Geddes, maybe she won't say that. Canick, no, I'm sorry. Donnelly, are you doing my job again? I must not be so good at this. Canick, you are. Donnelly, all right. She can't say CP, even though that's what she said is the truth. You can lead her. Well, that's not really so suitable either. I think, is this something you're planning to do at the beginning? How long is the redirect going to be? Geddes, not that long. It will go through the break. I would be very surprised if it did not. Donnelly, it's just how she's going to answer the question. CP is a loaded, even if it's true, it's one of the reasons why I excluded that other evidence for a variety of reasons. But if you want to take a minute, and I guess the two of you can walk over to her and say, the answer to the question would be, what did we say yesterday? Canick, yes. Well, before I answer that, could I suggest this to the court? The reason why she's been telling the jury all the while that she told him that she was 17 is because her parents told her to say she was 17. I think that's the answer. The other stuff is gratuitous. Geddes, but that's not her answer. Her answer to you was no, that's not why. Donnelly, well, people can have more than one reason for doing something, and I'm trying to think of how to do this. I think there has been reference to this court proceeding, and maybe that's the way to refer to it. Canick, I don't have a problem with that. Donnelly, and if you both talk, you go stand next to her so it doesn't look like you're coaching her, that she was aware of the prior court proceeding that he had. Geddes, involving a minor. Canick, no. Donnelly, I think no. She was aware of a prior court proceeding that he had. Let's leave it there. Geddes, okay. He talked earlier about that the letters he introduced were the defendant, where the witness wrote the defendant in jail. Donnelly, right? Geddes, I am going to ask her about those, and it is going to open the door to the fact he was in jail. I believe Your Honor already ruled on that. Canick, why can't you say that you were? Because when I asked the questions about it, I asked, you guys were apart. You were separated. Donnelly, well, A, I think it's come in sort of obliquely already because she talked about visitation. Canick, right. Donnelly, and B, well, the government has represented that the defendant told her to write nice letters because his mail was being checked. Canick, okay. Donnelly, and so I'm going to permit that. Geddes, and then finally on cross, she was asked about monetizing on her time with R. Kelly on a book deal that she had. I plan to ask her how her life has been since she left him, and I anticipate that she's going to tell him that it was pretty awful because she has been harassed excessively. Canick, what does that have to do with monetizing? Geddes, because, Canick, I can get into what her life has been like, but I stayed away from that. Donnelly, you know, I think it is probably an argument that's best left for summation as a general matter. What benefit people have coming and talking about relating things like that rather than otherwise he's going to get up and talk about, as I say, I am assuming that there are a number of public appearances and so, which I think that it doesn't, I'm going to deny it. That's going to then get his, okay, mechanic. We have videos of her twerking to the floor and back. Donnelly, you need to get yourself into 2021 with the rest of us, okay? All right. And I think we're the same age. And then that was the end of the sidebar. And then they're back in open court with the jury present. And then Donnelly says, all right, redirect examination. Then Geddes, yes, Your Honor. So then Geddes, on cross-examination, defense counsel asks you about the reasons that you told the defendant that you were 18 years old rather than your true age of 17. Why did you tell the defendant that you were 18 and not 17? I told the defendant I was 18 because of a previous court proceeding. And not one of yours, correct? No, the defendant's. On cross-examination, you were asked about a document that you testified about on direct where your parents authorized another individual to act as your guardian while you were still 17. Do you recall those questions on both direct and cross? Yes, I do. And on direct, you identified that individual who is named as your guardian in those documents as Juice's mother, correct? Yes, that is correct. How did you know Juice's mother? The defendant had told me about her, and he allowed her to be around us. And aside from the defendant, did you have any other means of knowing Juice's mom? I did not know. And how about parents? Did your parents have any other means of knowing Juice's mom? They did not know. On cross-examination, you were shown a variety of letters, handwritten letters. There was Defense Exhibit N and O and I think S and T. I'm going to show you in a moment. Do you recall those letters? Yes, and they were letters purportedly to family members. Is that correct? Correct. Did you send any of these letters? My family never saw those letters. And what was the purpose of writing those letters? The defendant would have other girlfriends make me write those letters, and he said that they would go to his attorneys and they would never see the light of day. And whose idea was the content of those letters? It was to protect the defendant. Canic, objection. Donnelly, well, the question is who? Whose idea was it to write those letters? Azriel, it was the defendant. And then Geddes. And who told you, who, if anyone, told you what to write in those letters? The defendant would tell me exactly what to say. And you testified earlier about the reason for it. What was the reason for it? It was to protect the defendant. And to protect him from what? Objection, overruled. Again, previous court proceedings, a previous attorney had told him to make sure every girlfriend was writing letters to protect the defendant. Fair to say it was to protect him from Canic. This is leading, Your Honor. It's overruled. Fair to say it was to protect him in a trial like this on very serious charges. Yes, objection, overruled. And I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 315 and 316. May I approach, Your Honor? Yes. Okay, do you recognize what was shown in Government Exhibit 315 and 316? Yes, I do. Just generally speaking, what are those? Those are statements that the defendant made me write. And are they typewritten statements? Yes, they are. And whose idea was the content in these statements? The defendant. Government Office 315 and 316. Any objection? May I see them? Sure. No objection, Your Honor. Okay, that's in evidence. And then Geddes picks back up. And I'm not going to have you read out each of these as they're somewhat lengthy, but it's some of the content that was in those handwritten letters that you previously read during your cross-examination, also repeated in these typewritten letters. Yes, and at the time, and in those letters, both that you read on cross-examination and in Government Exhibit 315 and 316, there is conversation about what, if anything, you and your mom did prior to meeting the defendant in Jacksonville. Do you recall what was in those letters about that? I do, yes. And was that true, what you wrote? It was fabricated. And again, whose idea? Whose idea was it to fabricate that? The defendant's. And I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 456 and 461. May I approach? Yes. Okay, do you recognize what's shown in 456 and 461? Yes, I do. And just generally speaking, what are those? Those are letters to exploit me, to protect me. Donnelly, I'll sustain just to that part. Those are those letters similar to the other ones you've described? Azriel, yes, they were too. And then Canic, Your Honor, Donnelly, yes. All right. I don't know what you're objecting to. She hasn't said anything. All right. Next question. Those are letters similar to the ones before. Go ahead. Geddes. And who wrote these letters? I did. Whose idea was the content? The defendant's. Geddes. Government offers 456 and 461. Canick, no objection. Donnelly, okay, those are in evidence. Geddes. May I publish, Your Honor? Yes. Okay, to the jury only, please. Could you please, without reading, is that your name signed at the bottom? Yes, it is. Okay, so please don't read your name, but could you read the content of what you wrote in this one-page letter? Yes. Robert, I wanted you, but you only wanted me to be friends, and I'm sorry. Robert, I wanted you, but you only wanted me to be friends. You only wanted to help me learn and watch me grow. I wanted more. I wanted you to make me feel good. Desperately wanted you to want me how I crave you. I started to make threats to you, and I'm sorry. If you don't bring me back that dick, then I'm going to tell everyone you R-ed me. I'm going to tell everyone you've been R-ing me since I've been a minor. I know that saying that could not only jeopardize your image, but ruin everything you have. But I want you, and I won't stop until I have you. I know you don't want me to. I know you don't want to have sex with me, but I yearn to feel your D inside of me. You're not trying to seduce me, and that makes me want you even more. I knew you'd never want to have sex with me, so I came up with stuff to say so you'd have no choice but to F me. I'll tell everyone you R'd me. I'll tell everyone you hit me and was effing a minor. I'll make up lies and say you tied me down and F me as I cried out, even though we both know you didn't. I just wish you wanted to F me as bad as I wanted F you. I'm sorry, I couldn't accept just being friends. Anything in that letter that you just wrote accurate? No, aside from where I say abuse, but everything else is not true. And is this an example of one of the letters that the defendant had you and other females who were living with him write to protect himself? Yes. I'd like to publish for the witness, not for the witness only. I want to publish for the jury. Only what's in evidence now is Government Exhibit 456. Okay. Again, without reading at the bottom, whose name is that? Mine. So without reading your name, and just to be clear, is that both your first and your last name on there? Yes, it is. And what's your signature? And that's your signature. Yes, it is. All right. So without reading your name, we'll cover up just to make sure. Thank you. Can you please read what's written in Government Exhibit 456? Robert, I also did something bogus just in case you caught me stealing and let me go. I decided I would spank myself really hard until I had bruises on me and was going to blackmail you and said you did it to protect yourself. And I don't want to be thinking like that because that's exactly what my mom and dad is doing to you right now. I hope one day you do forgive me. Did you ever spank yourself? Never. On cross-examination, and just to be clear, fair to say this is another letter that the defendant asked you to write for his protection in the future. Yes, it is. On cross-examination, you were asked whether you took any pictures of bruises that you had and whether you sent those to any family members. Do you recall those questions? I do, yes. Did you take any pictures of bruises that you had? I did, yes. What did you do with those photographs? What did you do with them? Well, at the time, I had sent them to my email from my email. So you sent them to yourself? Yes. Why did you do that? Because the defendant was already been checking my phone and had my password. And so what about that made you send yourself those photographs? He didn't know anything about apps and emails. So I figured if I had sent it to my email, that was one place he wouldn't know. So was it a manner in which you would be able to keep those photographs? Yes, it was. Now, did there come a time when neither the defendant or someone else did go through your emails? Yes, it was. Who went through your emails? I had Juice go through my phone. How did that come about? I had gotten in trouble and he had her thoroughly check my phone while he was in the studio. And do you recall what, if anything, Juice did after she checked your phone? Yes, what did she do? She told the defendant that I had sent pictures to myself and he took that phone and I never saw it again. And have you had an opportunity to see whether or not do you still have the email account on which from which you sent those, to which you sent those photographs? I don't remember that email in 2015. Child, okay, Gettys. Did you tell for the government about an email address that you believed you had in 2015? Yes, I did. And did you tell the government that perhaps they could find those photographs? Canic, objection. Donnelly, overruled. Yes, I did. You were asked on cross-examination about the name that called the defendant. Do you recall those questions? Yes, I do. When you first started spending time with the defendant, what did the defendant ask you to call him? Strictly Daddy. And when, if ever, did you start calling him by another name? Probably when I was 19, about 19, I started calling him Papa Bear. Can you call him Papa Bear when you were 17? Never. You were asked on cross-examination about your first trip to see the defendant and whether or not there was a concert in Los Angeles during that first trip. Do you recall those questions? I do, yes. And you recall you were shown a document that purported to show the different venues where the defendant performed. Do you remember that? Yes. Now, do you remember the first time that you saw the defendant outside of your home state of Florida? It was on the West Coast, not exactly the city. No. Okay. Gettys. And I am showing the witness what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 217. And in 217, that's an American Airlines boarding pass that you previously testified about. Do you recall that? Yes, I do. And actually, can we show, this is in evidence, but I don't want to show the public, just the jury, please. And this was for travel on April 29th of 2015, correct? Yes, it was. And why did you go to Los Angeles? The defendant had told me to text his assistant saying that Mr. Kelly said to get me to LA. And the defendant paid for that. Yes, he did. And when you got to Los Angeles, did you see the defendant? I did. Any doubt in your mind that you saw the defendant in Los Angeles on that first trip? No. You were asked about whether there was a concert on that first trip. Did you have sexual contact with the defendant even when he didn't have a concert? Yes, I would. Does the fact of the defendant having a concert have any impact whatsoever on whether or not you might have sexual contact with him? No, it did not. And during that trip, the first trip to Los Angeles, that's when the defendant told you about the rules for the first time, correct? Yes, and that's when the defendant told you that you should be wearing sweats for the first time, correct? Yes, and that's when the defendant told you that even though that the trip wasn't a wasted trip because it gave you an opportunity to soak it all in. Do you recall that? Yes, I do. And that all happened in Los Angeles. Yes, it did. Now, you were asked about the first time that you had sexual intercourse with the defendant. What do you remember about the location? And I'm not talking about the city. What do you remember about the location where you and the defendant first had sexual intercourse? I do recall that it was in the West Coast, and I remember that the room was a suite that had a kitchenette and it had a fireplace. And you have a clear memory of that. Yes, I do. And what do you remember about whether or not you had sexual contact by the time you went to the Mandalay Bay in Los Angeles? Can you rephrase that? Sorry, yes. What do you remember about? Do you remember whether you had sexual intercourse with the defendant by the time you went to Los Angeles and stayed at the Mandalay Bay? Yes, I do. Had you had sexual intercourse with the defendant by that time? Yes, I had. So do you know what you had sexual intercourse with the defendant prior to when you went to Las Vegas? Yes, I do. How do you know that? Because of the fireplace. That was the first time. And I just remember that fireplace vividly because I've never been in a hotel room with one. And when you went to Las Vegas, do you remember what happened in the hotel room in Las Vegas? I do, yes. Did you have sexual intercourse with the defendant there? I did, yes. Was it memorable in some form? Yes. Why? Because he wouldn't let Juice leave. It was in front of her? Yes. On cross-examination, you were asked whether you told the government that the defendant told you that you weren't pulling your weight as far as your music career was concerned. Do you recall those questions? I do. Do you remember the defendant saying you weren't pulling your weight as far as your music career? No. You were also asked about whether your mother had told you to take as many photographs as you possibly could of you and the defendant together and to include crazy face ones kissing because you felt that your mother wanted to exploit Mr. Kelly to the media and to take advantage of his finances. Do you recall those questions? I do, yes. And when you were asked that question, you told defense counsel that that wasn't true. Can you explain what you meant by that? My mother had asked me to send her pictures of me and the defendant. However, the defendant added on to exploit him. So when your mom asked you to take photographs of you and the defendant, she never told you that it was for the purpose of exploiting the defendant, did she? Canic, objection. Azriel, correct. And then Donnelly, overruled. Azriel, that is true. Geddes, and who gave you the idea that it was the purpose of exploiting the defendant? The defendant. And by the way, did you take certain photographs of yourself and the defendant together, correct? Yes, I did. And you testified about some of those photographs on direct examination, right? Yes, I did. Did you ever provide those to the media? Some of them, yes. Did you provide them to the media back in 2015 when you took them? Never. 2016? Never. To your knowledge, did your parents provide them to the media in 2015? Never. 2016? Never. And when you said you provided some to the media, what are you referring to? I'm referring to when the defendant was no longer residing at Trump Towers. So, fast forward to 2020. 2019. 2019? Yes. And why did you provide them to the media? I don't recall why actually, but I believe it was for different reasons. When you provided it to the media, were you still with, not physically with, but were you still with the defendant? I was, yes. And was it in part to show that the defendant wasn't a bad guy? Donnelly, well, don't lead the witness. Azriel, it was, yes, it was. Donnelly, just rephrase it. Witness, Azriel, I'm sorry. And then Geddes, can you explain some? I know you said that there were different reasons that you provided them to the media. Yes. Can you explain some of those reasons that you provided it to the media? Well, it was for a documentary that was a friend of the defendants, and he had publicized them from that documentary. And when you said he, who are you referring to? The friend of the defendant. And did the defendant, what, if anything, did the defendant say about the documentary was in favor of the defendant? And whose idea was the documentary? The defendant's friend. And what, if anything, did the defendant himself think of the idea of the documentary? Objection. Sustain. I mean, you won. Sustain. Geddes, what, if anything, did the defendant say to you about the documentary? He didn't say anything about the documentary, but his friend did say that it was Donnelly. Okay, no. Azriel, I'm sorry. Donnelly, that's all right. Next question. Azriel, okay. Geddes. On cross-examination, you were asked about certain activities of Juice and Neek. Do you recall some of those questions? Yes, you were asked whether Neek had a car. Juice had a job. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. Okay, well, I don't remember because I don't remember her asking. I don't remember in testimony about whether or not Dominique had a car or about Juice having a job. Maybe the part about Juice having a job, but definitely not Dominique having a car. If y'all remember me, because like this been going on for days now, a whole lot of reading. But let me know in the comments if you remember in one of the prior videos where I stated that something came up about Dominique having a car. Okay, so let's get back into this. And then Ariel said, yes, I do. And then Geddes, were you allowed to discuss Juice's personal life with Juice? No. And how about Neek? No. Do you really have any idea whether Neek had a car? No. Whether Juice had a job? No. Did you have a job? No, I did not. Did you have a car? No, I did not. And on cross-examination, you were asked about the fact that you didn't have a job. And counsel asked you, I believe, whether you at times tried to get a job. Do you recall those questions? Yes, I do. I want to direct your attention to the fall, the summer, and fall of 2019. Did you take any steps to try to get a job then? Yes, I did. And did you have discussions with the defendant about trying to get a job? Yes, I did. What types of jobs did you try to get during the the summer of 2019 and the fall of 2019? Any job that was hiring? And can you just say, like, what types of jobs you were looking at? Retail, corporate, office, those are a few. And what, if anything, did the defendant say about your getting a job? He said that it would have to be right. And did he explain what he meant by it being right? We already knew what that meant. What did you understand that the defendant meant? Meaning that the job, no men could be working at that job in order for us to get hired there. Now, y'all tell me in 2021, what job could she have possibly gotten where there were no men working there? Name one profession where it's only men, like there are no women whatsoever. Okay, like help me understand this. Or vice versa, where there's only women and absolutely no men working for the company, or no men that would have come into the company like as delivery people, clients, etc. Help me understand. So anyway, she says, meaning a job that the job, no man could be working at that job in order for us to get hired there. Were you able to find a job where you didn't interact with men? No, we were not. And by the way, when you say we, who are you referring to? Me and Joy. Did you try and get a job on your own? I don't remember. Okay, but you said we. I just want to understand, what was Joy's role in getting a job? Oh, no, we had to get a job where we were hired together. That was also what he said. Okay, how somebody in jail dictating to you, who don't know how you're going to pay the rent, where your next meal is coming from, how are they going to dictate to you whether or not there were men at the job that you and Joy had to have a job together? Like, who was going to come back and, like, who was he sending to verify wasn't no men on the job and that you and Joy both? Like, girl, you exhausting me at this point. But anyway, and he, referring to the defendant, yes. So you had to find a job with both you and Joy could work together and you couldn't interact with men. Is that correct? Yes. On cross-examination, you were asked about a time when you left the defendant and went to Florida and then returned back to the defendant. Do you recall those questions and your answers? I do, yes. And do you remember who you went to see when you went to Florida? Yes, I do. Who did you went to see? Lord have mercy. Not by name, but by relation. Oh, my brother. And do you remember how you got to Florida? Yes, my brother had paid for the flight. And do you remember when you arrived in Florida? Approximately what time of day or night? Yeah, it was definitely evening, noon time. It probably had to be about any time after 5 o'clock p.m. Okay, and do you remember what you did that night in Florida? Yes, I do. What did you do? My brother had invited me out to like a hookah lounge to try and make me feel comfortable, better. And did you then go to the hookah lounge? Yes, I did. And did you then, where did you go after that? I went back to my brother's apartment. And what did you do when you went back? The defendant had booked me a flight for the next morning. Do you remember what time you left? Immediately. Oh, actually, I believe I left that same night. So approximately how long were you in Florida? For less than 24 hours. On cross-examination, you were asked about how you dressed when you met the defendant at the Dolphin Hotel. Do you recall that? Yes, I do. And you read certain letters, and you were asked about whether it was true that it was your mom's idea how to dress that day. Do you recall that? Yes, I do. And how your mom wanted you to look all grown. Do you recall that? Yes, I do. I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 233A. May I approach, Your Honor? Yes. Generally speaking, do you recognize what's shown in 233A? I'll have to see it. Okay, hold on. I'm going to direct your attention. I am going to put it. Can I show the witness only on the Elmo, please? Yes. And there is a part that is highlighted. Can you take a moment and read that, please? Yes. To yourself. Yes, I can. What is that, just generally speaking? It is a message from my mother. And what is the date of the message? April the 21st, 2015. And do you remember what you were doing that day? Yes. What were you doing? I was going to audition for the defendant. At the Dolphin Hotel? Yes, I was. Can you read the text message that's highlighted from your mother on April 21st of 2015? Donnelly, I don't think it's in evidence. Geddes, I don't want to offer the entire thing in evidence. Do you remember what your mother told you that day? Yes, I do. What did your mom tell you that day? She basically told me that not to look too grown. And that was for your audition with the defendant. Yes. On cross-examination yesterday, you were asked about certain typewritten letters that you said you wrote and sent the defendant. Do you recall those? Yes, I do. And I am just going to put them on the screen for the witness only. It was Defense Exhibit Q and Defense Exhibit R. Do you remember those letters? Yes, I do. And why did you write those letters? The defendant was no longer living at Trump Towers, and he had told us to write him letters. And what, if anything, did the defendant tell you to write in those letters? He would tell us specific things that we talked about because it was checked, but they were mostly to uplift his spirits. And when you said, and Your Honor, may I lead here? Yes. The reason why the defendant, told you that specific things would be checked was because the defendant was incarcerated, correct? Yes, this is true. I believe, then the witness, this is dying, Donnelly. Oh, okay. So then there was a pause. I guess they got some batteries for whatever she was looking at, the Elmo, I guess. And so then Getty said, and you said that certain things would be checked. What did you mean by that? Meaning that I guess the officers in the mailroom would read all the letters before they got to him. And at the time when you wrote those letters, the defendant was under a federal indictment, correct? Correct. And there were certain victims named in that indictment, correct? Canick, objection. Donnelly, overruled. Azriel, correct. And I'm sorry, just to be clear, you said that there were, who was in the mailroom? The police officers at the jail would read over every piece of mail. Okay, and at the time, I just asked you about this federal indictment and the fact that there were certain victims named in that. Were you one of those victims named? I was, yes. And at the time, you weren't cooperating with the government, correct? Objection. Donnelly, can I just see the parties at the side, please? Okay, so the following sidebar took place outside the hearing of the jury. Donnelly, I thought everybody was Jane Doe in the indictment. Geddes, she was Jane Doe number 5. I'm sorry, so I don't mean that she was named by first and last name. Donnelly, I see. Geddes, but she, based on the conduct, she understood and had been informed that she was one of the victims in the case, and both the defendant and she were aware of the microscope that was on their relationship. Donnelly, what's your objection? Mechanic, How is this? This is beyond the scope of the cross-examination. I asked nothing about the content of the indictment. Donnelly, that's kind of not a thing beyond the scope of the cross. She is asking about why she wrote the letters, not about, and this is relevant, Mechanic, but, Donnelly, I take it that, at least as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, that the point is to, and I think you've done it already, the point is to bring out the fact that he was incarcerated at the time. Was this in Chicago, by the way? Geddes, he was incarcerated in Chicago, yes. Donnelly, he was incarcerated at the time that he had advised her that the mail was checked, and that's why she wrote the letters. Mechanic, so what does this other stuff have to do with that? Geddes, I can explain. Donnelly, Judge. Mechanic, I never want your job. Geddes, defense counsel, introduced these letters to show that a rosy picture of the life between the defendant and the victim, the witness. And in fact, it wasn't so rosy. And one of the reasons that she was painting this very rosy picture is that she had been named as a victim. But the defendant and the witness understood that their relationship was under a microscope and that prison officials were reading their mail and it was potentially going to us, the government. Donnelly, here is my question about that. I do think it's relevant that she is not cooperative at that time. Was she cooperative at that time? Geddes, no. Donnelly, that part is relevant. I think you can bring that out. But you brought out that she's one of the people that's named in the indictment. Geddes, I'm sorry to interrupt. Donnelly, nobody is really sorry to interrupt. Mechanic, I guess that's why you do it, right? Donnelly, I know. Geddes, I was only going to say that was my question on this particular thing. Donnelly, all right. Geddes, I'm going to ask about the letters separately, but just the content. Donnelly, okay, let's move on. Mechanic, how much longer? Geddes, I don't have that much time for real. Mechanic, yeah, okay. Are we going to have a break before? Donnelly, would you like to? Mechanic, yes. Donnelly, how much more do you think you have? I don't want anybody to be uncomfortable. Geddes, maybe 15 minutes. Donnelly, let's take our morning break now, I think. Mechanic, okay. Geddes, all right. So then they're back in open court and the jury is present. So, all right, I think what we're going to do is take our morning break now, just so people have a chance to stretch their legs and we will be back in 10 minutes. Please don't talk about the case at all, and I will see you in a few minutes. Courtroom deputy, all rise. The jury exits the court. All right, everybody can sit down. You can take the witness out. Witness stepped down and exited the courtroom. Donnelly, maybe this is dangerous to say, but it seems quite clear that we will finish this witness before lunch. Do you have your next person ready to go, or is that the video person? No. Then Cruz Melendez says he's here, yes. And then Donnelly, okay, all right. So we will be back in about 10 minutes. And then Donnelly exited the courtroom. The defendant exited the courtroom. Recess is taken. And then we pick up where the defendant has re-entered the courtroom. And then the defendant re-enters the courtroom. And the deputy all rise. And Donnelly entered the courtroom. And then then Donnelly said, are you ready to get the witness? And then Geddes, yes. And then Scholar, Your Honor, Mr. Mechanic, he stepped outside for just a moment. Then Donnelly, oh, all right. I didn't see him over there. I didn't notice that. Well, I think we can get the witness and we would just wait until he gets back before we bring in the jury. Witness entered and resumed the stand. Donnelly, all right, Mr. Canick is here. Let's get the jury, please. And then all rise, jury enters. Court deputy, you may be seated. Donnelly, all right, welcome back, everybody. We're ready to continue with the redirect examination. Go ahead, Ms. Geddes. Geddes, thank you. Before the break, we were talking about a federal indictment in which named you, not by name, but by an alias as a victim. Do you recall those questions? I do. At the time of the indictment and at the time that you wrote those letters to the defendant in Defendant's Exhibits Q and R, were you cooperative with the government at that time? I was not. In Defense Exhibit Q, which is in evidence, and may we publish to the jury, please? Exhibit published to the jury only. That highlighted part reads, when we carved our initials into that table. Do you recall what you were referring to when you wrote, when we carved our initials into that table? Yes, I do. What were you referring to specifically in that statement? An incident that had happened in 2015 where the defendant had carved our initials on a table at the Hyatt. And where was the Hyatt located? In Atlanta, Georgia. And do you remember what happened right before the time when the defendant carved your initials into that table at the Hyatt? Yes, what happened? We had planned a picnic. And had you been with the defendant in the immediate days prior to then? Yes, I had. Where had you been? I believe the big house. Objection, I believe. Donnelly, well, do you know where you were or not? Don't forget about your microphone. Azriel, yes, it was Atlanta, Georgia, at the hotel and the big house. Donnelly, okay. Geddes, and when you wrote this letter to the defendant, you knew that one of the rules that the defendant had was to remain positive, correct? Yes, it was. And in fact, Government Exhibit 331, which is in evidence, can you find just the second point? Okay, find a positive quote to say to Daddy every day. And were the letters that you wrote an example of positive things that you were sharing with the defendant? Yes, they were. On cross-examination, you were asked about 2 audio recordings, and you listened to those recordings, correct? Yes, I did. Was that part of that same documentary supporting the defendant? Yes, it was. On cross-examination, defense counsel, and just to be clear, that documentary, that was the only one made by the defendant's friend. Yes, it was. Defense counsel on cross-examination showed you Defense Exhibit U, which I am showing the witness only. Do you recognize Defense Exhibit U? Yes. And on cross, the defense counsel showed it to you, but this one wasn't read to the jury, correct? Correct. Do you remember the circumstances under which you wrote this letter? I'm sorry, is this in evidence or not? It is in evidence. And that's Geddes to Donnelly. And then Donnelly says, okay. Then Azriel says, yes, I do. And then Donnelly, can it go to the jury? Geddes, it can go to the jury, yes. Donnelly, can it go public? Geddes, this can go public, yes. At least this page of it can. Then Geddes, what were the circumstances under which you wrote this letter? The defendant had told me what to say in this letter. And referring to both this letter and the other handwritten letters that you've testified about, when I've been just asking you questions today, who did you give those letters to? The defendant. And Defense Exhibit U, I am going to refer to page 2. This is also in evidence. This is already in evidence, and we can publish this as well, not just to the jury. Where it says, at the age of 17, I never had sex with Robert Kelly. Is that accurate? This is not accurate. Whose idea was it to write that? The defendant's. Defense counsel on cross-examination showed you certain reports that had been prepared by agents with the Department of Homeland Security. Do you recall those reports? Yes. Prior to your cross-examination by defense counsel, had you seen any of those reports? Never. And did you ever have an opportunity to review those reports for accuracy? Never. On cross-examination, defense counsel asked you about all sorts of things that your parents did. Do you recall those things? Yes. Who exposed you to a sexually transmitted disease without your consent? Your parents? Objection. Or the defendant? Court overruled. The defendant. Who had sexual contact with you, including sexual intercourse with you when you were 17 years old? Your parents or the defendant? The defendant. Who made you write letters containing false confessions? Your parents or the defendant? The defendant. Who made you film videos of you engaging in degrading conduct, including smearing and eating feces? Your parents or the defendant? The defendant. Who gave you spankings every 2 to 3 days? Your parents or the defendant? The defendant. Whose idea was it to call those spankings chastisements? Your parents or the defendant? The defendant. Who made you stay in a room or on a tour bus for days at a time as punishment? Your parents or the defendant? The defendant. Who directed you to have sexual contact with another female at his discretion? Your parents or the defendant? The defendant. Who directed you to have contact with nephew, a man you had never even met, at his discretion? Your parents or the defendant? The defendant. Nothing further, Your Honor. Okay. Any recross examination? Canic. Yes. Do you need a moment? Donnelly. I've got this. She's ready to go. Canic. I didn't want to just jump right in, Your Honor. So Canic begins his cross-examination. You were asked on redirect as to why you told Mr. Kelly that you were 18. It was your parents who told you to tell Mr. Kelly that you were 18. Am I correct? That is not correct. And when you told that to the government in your interview, you're saying that was a mistake. That was not accurate. That was not accurate. Which one of these people who are sitting at the table indicating were in the room at the time taking notes? And where it says indicating, he's like pointing towards the prosecution table. Geddes. Objection. Donnelly. Overruled. I feel like we went over this before, but do you remember at any particular time or just ever? Canic. Yes. Donnelly. Okay. Do you remember which other people at the table was in the room when you met with them? Azriel. They were all present at different times. Canic. And they were taking notes. Am I correct? Correct. Now, the government asked you when you wrote the letter to Mr. Kelly when he was in jail, you wrote letters that were positive and uplifting to him. Am I correct? Okay, I had to pause there. Let me see where I was. He was asking her about the uplifting text. She said yes, and at that point you weren't seeking a book deal, were you? I was not. Okay, now you are. I am not. Well, the visit to Stacey Brown was not about a book deal. Geddes. Objection. Donnelly. Overruled. Azriel. You said now, as of today's date, when after you started cooperating with the government, you sought a book deal. Am I correct? Correct. Now, are you aware? I want to go back to the letter that you sent to your brother. I never sent that letter to my brother. The letter you wrote to your brother. In that letter, you said that Ma continued to nag me about sleeping with him and trying to get to take as many pictures and videos as I could of him and me, because she said to me that she wanted to use those pictures and videos to blackmail him in case he didn't want to do what they asked him to do. In your interview with the government, you told the government, did you not, that your mother had asked you to take as many pictures of you and Mr. Kelly together, to include the crazy face ones kissing, because she felt that your mother wanted to, I think it was he felt that your mother wanted to exploit him to the media since she was 17 years old at the time. That's what you told the government during those meetings. Am I correct? That was not correct. It's written in the document. Am I correct? Correct. Okay. And when you were being interviewed by the government, they told you to tell the truth. Am I correct? Yes, they did. And again, they told you that if you were to make a false statement to a government official, that's a crime. I don't recall that, Are you aware of that? Yes, I am. Now, you also told your brother in that letter about the police officers coming to the door at the Dolphin Hotel. You remember discussing that in the letter, am I correct? It was written in the letter, yes, and that's part of the same thing you told the government during your interview by them of you, am I correct? I don't remember. And do you remember writing in the letter that they didn't even hesitate to take you out of the Florida Education Department? That was not correct. I didn't ask you if that was accurate. I asked you, do you recall that being in the letter that you wrote? Yes, that is in that letter. And that's the same thing you told the government, am I correct? I don't recall telling them that. And of course, if the government wrote that down in their paperwork, they made a mistake. I don't know. Now, in the letter that you wrote directly to your brother, you referenced your father trying to get Mr. Kelly to give him a lighting job, the job of being his light man. Do you remember talking about that in the letter? Yes, I do. Now, that's the same thing you told the government, am I correct, when you spoke with them? That is correct. And you would agree with me that at the time you're fully in cooperation with the government, am I correct? If there's a timestamp or a date, well, when you were sitting down being interviewed by the government, you were going to the government and cooperating with them, am I correct? Correct. And you would agree with me that Mr. Kelly was not in that room, right? He was not. Right. He was in jail. Then no response from Ariel. Am I correct? Then she finally says, yes, you are. So he wasn't there to tell you what to say. Am I correct? That is true. That came out of your mouth on your own volition. Am I correct? Geddes, objection to tone. Donnelly, objection to what? Geddes, tone. Donnelly, no, overruled. Ariel, I don't recall. Okay, you don't recall that came out of your own mouth of your own volition. Objection. Well, I have kind of lost the thread of what we're talking about. Do you recall making the statement that Mr. Canick is asking you about? Can you repeat the statement? Canick, do you recall sitting with the government and giving them your account as to what you said Mr. Kelly subjected you to? Can you rephrase the question? You sat down with the government, am I correct? Yes, I did. You told them that you said to this jury, am I correct? What is the question that you're asking me? Give me the answer to the question that I'm asking you. My question is, you had a meeting with the government. Yes, I did. You made an allegation, am I correct? Well, what was the allegation? Donnelly, just answer his question. Canick, oh Jesus. Donnelly, Mr. Canick, calm down. Ariel, I don't understand. Donnelly, well, he just wants answer his question. You had a meeting with the government. You told them certain things. Correct so far? Yes, I did. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Canick. Mr. Kelly wasn't there, am I correct? No, he wasn't. The things they wrote down on the paper came from you, am I correct? Yes, not Mr. Kelly. No. And the things you told them are the very same things that you told your brother in this letter. That is not true. Nothing further, Your Honor. Donnelly, okay, any redirect? Geddes, very briefly, Your Honor. Donnelly, everybody says that. Go ahead. Geddes, I mean it. So we have redirect examination from Ms. Geddes. On recross examination, you were asked about what happened when the officers, or what you said happened when the officers showed up at the hotel. Did officers show up at the Dolphin Hotel? Canny, Your Honor, that's beyond the scope. That's not what I asked. I asked her what's in the document, not what happened. Donnelly, I have to agree. I do think this is well-worn ground that he showed us. If there's something specific, and then Geddes cut her off and said yes. And then Donnelly finished her thought. You want to ask that, that's fine. Geddes, in the letter to your brother, which is one page of it is in evidence as a defense exhibit P, it said, once I got there, after about 30 minutes, they planned and called the police. What part, if any, in that statement is untrue? They plan. The rest of it is true though, right? Correct. It's just the case that they didn't plan it. Correct. Correct. Geddes, nothing further. Donnelly, anything else, Mr. Canick, Your Honor, before this witness goes, I just offer, I think it's Defense Exhibit I and H and I ask it to be played for the jury. Donnelly, any objection? Geddes, no. Donnelly, do we have to play it now? I think we have another witness that's available. Canick, okay, we can play it after the witness leaves. Donnelly, well, you're not going to have any more questions for this witness about that, right? You? Geddes, I am not. Donnelly, how long is it? Canick, about a minute. Donnelly, oh, if it's that short, you can play it. Canick, it's probably a little longer. Give us 5. Donnelly, 5. All right, go ahead. Geddes, Your Honor, can the witness be excused? Donnelly, yes. Witness was excused and exited the courtroom. Then it says end of excerpt number 1. Continued on next page for excerpt number 2. Continuing. And now we have the prosecutor, Shahida. And she says, yes, the government calls Malak bin Badullah. I think that's how you pronounce it. And then Donnelly, give us just a second. I think we've got to move some stuff here. Donnelly, okay, you can get the witness. The witness entered and took the stand. The deputy, swore her in, and then she agreed to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then she was asked to state her name, and it's Malak bin Badallah, Benabdalla. And then the courtroom deputy, have a seat, please. And then Donnelly, okay, just a few ground rules before we start. You can take your mask off. The lawyers are going to ask you questions, and our court reporter takes down everything that you say. So you've got to speak into the microphone so everybody can hear you. And the second thing is you can't speak too quickly, okay? And then Malak said, okay. And then Donnelly, and then you can also just don't speak over whichever lawyer is asking you questions. Okay. And then if there is a question that one of the lawyers asks that you don't understand or you want to have repeated, just let me know and I will have them rephrase it. And then finally, just do your best to answer only the question that you're being asked. Okay? Okay. Okay, go ahead. So then Malik bin I'm just going to say Malak B, whatever her name is. I think I keep saying Malik, but it's Malak, M-A-L-A-K, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, affirmed by the courtroom deputy, was examined and testified as the following. And then Ms. Shahada, good afternoon. Do you receive a subpoena to testify here today? Donnelly, I don't think the microphone is on. Canick, I didn't hear. Did you receive a subpoena to testify here today? Yes. Do you want to be here today? No, not really. How old are you? 22. What city? In what city did you go to high school? Orlando. Wait, let me get these voices right. Orlando. Did you grow up in Orlando? No. When did you move to Orlando? In 2014. And approximately what time of year did you move to Orlando in 2014? Around September. And did you start that school year there? Yes. What school year were you entering in September 2014? My sophomore year of high school. Where did you go to high school? Freedom High School. Did you graduate from Freedom High School? Yes. What did you graduate? What year did you graduate? 2017. I am showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 75, exhibit published. Do you see that photo? Yes. Without seeing this person's name, do you recognize the person in this photo? Yes. I am now showing the witness and the jury only what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 75A. Is this the same photo I just showed you in Government Exhibit 75? Yes. And is this the true name you know this individual by? Yes. I am showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 75C. Is this the same photograph in the two exhibits I just showed you with the name Jane in quotation marks underneath? Yes. I move to admit Government Exhibit 75C. Canic, no objection. Donnelly, okay, that's in evidence. And for the purposes of your testimony here today, we are going to refer to this individual as Jane, okay? Okay. Now, directing your attention to your sophomore year in high school. So, the year you entered school in September 2014. Who were you closest friends with that year? Jane and my friend Mia. And is Mia a nickname? Yes. What is Mia's full name? Jamia. What's her last name? Coates. Now, were you, Jane and Mia, all the same age? No, Jane was a year older than us. And when you started your sophomore year of high school, how old were you? I was 17. And was Jane in the same grade as you or a different grade? No, she was a year above Mia and I. So, was she a junior when you were a sophomore? Yes. Now, what types of things did you, Jane, and Jamia or Mia do when you hung out together in high school? We hung out all the time. We had lunch together, and we used to hang out outside of school sometimes. When you hung out outside of school, what types of things did you do? We would just go to each other's houses or get food together or do things like that, like watch movies and stuff. Now, what, if any, extracurricular activities do you recall Jane doing while she was in high school with you? She used to sing. She was in a club called the Patriot Singers. And what, if any, performances did Jane do for her singing? She did a lot of performances, in front of audiences and stuff. It was like a hobby of hers. Now, did you and Jane stay in touch throughout your high school years? No. What happened, or why didn't you stay in touch throughout your high school years? She left and just kind of stopped contact after a while. Around when did Jane leave? It was May of my sophomore year. Okay, so you started your sophomore year in September of 2014, is that right? Yeah. And so May would have been May of 2015? Yes, sorry. That's okay. And when you say Jane left, what do you mean by that? She left. She went to go meet with R. Kelly, and she was gone for a while. Now, after Jane initially left, did you and Jane stay in contact with each other? Yeah. And initially, how were you in contact with her? We had over the phone contact. And what types of communication over the phone did you have? Texts and calls and FaceTime calls. And initially, how often did you communicate with Jane after she left? We communicated often, but it just gradually lessened over time. At some point, did your communications with Jane stop completely? Yes. Around when was that? It was around after she turned 18. And do you recall approximately when Jane's birthday was? Yeah, December 30th she turned 18 when I was my sophomore year. Now, do you recall what telephone number you used back in 2015? What cell phone you used? That I used? Yes. Yes. Do you still have that number today? Yes, I do. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 936. Without saying what this phone number is, do you recognize this number? Yes. And what is this? Without reading it, what is this phone number? It's my phone number. And is this your cell phone number? Yes. And is this the same cell phone number you've had since 2015? Yes. And including 2015? Yes. I would like to offer Government Exhibit 936 for the jury only. Any objection? Canic. No objection. Donnelly. Okay. Government's Exhibit 936 was received in evidence. And then Shahata. And may we publish it for the jury only, please? Donnelly, yes. Okay, I keep losing my place here because people want to talk, but let me go back up here to the top with Miss Shahida saying, now, do you recall what number or numbers Jane used when you communicated with her in or around 2015? Not off the top of my head. Did you communicate with Jane on multiple numbers in 2015? Yes. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 204. Do you recognize Government Exhibit 204? Yes. And what do you recognize it to be? The contact that I have for Jane. And is this a screenshot of the contact on your cell phone? Yes. I move to admit Government Exhibit 204. Mechanic, no objection. Donnelly, okay, that's in evidence. Government Exhibit 204 was received in evidence. And may I publish it to the jury only, please? At the top here, indicating, and she's pointing, is that Jane's true name? Yes. And can you read out what number is listed here? 708-769-0779. May I approach, Your Honor? Yes. I am about to show you what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 205A through 205A through 205M. Prior to your testimony here today, did you have a chance to look at what I just handed you? Yes. And generally speaking, what are those exhibits? They are text messages with her. With Jane? With Jane, yeah. And are those text messages from 2015 and early 2016? Yes. Your Honor, some of these texts are already in evidence, but I'd like to offer all of 205A through M. Any objection? No objection. Okay, those are in evidence and can publish them publicly. Do you want them just for the jury, or how do you want them? I think I would determine that depending on the page. With each page? Yes. Okay. May I just approach to retrieve? Sure. So exhibits 205A through 205M was received in evidence. So now I am showing you Government Exhibit 205A, and this can be for everyone. And focusing first on the number up top, the number 407-360-4738, what is that? That's a phone number that Jane was using at that time. Okay, and the date of this series of text messages is October 3rd, 2015, correct? Yes. Now, the texts that are in gray here, are those your texts or Jane texts? Jane's. And directing your attention to the second text, well, actually withdrawn. At the time of these texts, had Jane already left Orlando? Yes. And had you spoken to her before she left? Before she left Orlando, had you spoken to her? No. Well, yeah, I mean, before she left, I was still in contact with her. Right. And did you have an understanding? I think you testified earlier. Do you have an understanding of where Jane went when she left? Yeah. Where did she go? Well, I don't know exactly where she went, but I just know that she was with R. Kelly. And now, directing your attention to the second text on the Government 205A, where it states, you know, he nutted in me before his show today. You received that text from Jane? Yes. And did you understand Jane was referring to when she said he nutted in me before his show today? R. Kelly. And what did you understand the term nutted in me to mean? Like ejaculation? I'm showing you what's in evidence as 205B. Again, is this text with the same telephone number 407-206-4738 that Jane was using at the time? Yes. And the texts in gray are from Jane? Yes. I'm showing you what's in evidence as the government's Exhibit 205C. Are these, again, texts with Jane at that same number? Yes. And the gray texts are from Jane. Yes. Now, I'm directing your attention to the portion where there's emojis of some baby bottles, and then it says, for real though, you're gonna be the godmamas. I just hope we get married. Do you see that? I do. What did you understand Jane to be referring to at that time? Her being pregnant. And had you, apart from these text messages, had you spoken to Jane on the phone about her concern that she may have been pregnant? Yes. And what, if anything, did she tell you at that time? Objection. Overruled. You can answer. She said that she was scared, and that she was scared to have an abortion, and just like her being afraid. I am showing the jury only what's in evidence as Government Exhibits 205D. Are these text messages with Jane again? Yes. And are these from October 5th, 2015? Yes. And what's the first text where it says Mo? What does that mean? Dude. Is that a slang term you and Jane? Yes. And Mia used? Yes. And what did you understand this series of texts to be about? About her being afraid to get the abortion. And what, if any, understanding did you have regarding who Jane believed had made her pregnant? She knew that. Objection. Sustained. That. It's okay. Oh. That's okay is fine. Whenever I say sustained, you don't answer, okay? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Okay. So showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 205E, is this additional text with Jane? Yes. And were these texts again about her belief that she might be pregnant? Yes. And when she wrote to you, he was mad when I brought it up. Who did you understand her to be referring to? To R. Kelly. Now, when you were texting with Jane in 2015, did she ever send you photographs? Yes. And what kinds of photographs did she send you? Photos of herself and with R. Kelly. Okay, you are really cutting out there, witness. Okay. Photos of herself and with R. Kelly. And what, if anything, did she ask you to do with these photographs? She asked me to keep the photographs safe for her. And what did you do after you got the photographs? I screenshotted them and I saved them on my phone. I am showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 205F. Are these again texts with Jane? Yes. Okay, let me stop here for a second. Why would she screenshot the photos that Ariel sent to her when she could have just saved them to the phone? I mean, just curious. Or is that just how teenagers think? Anyway, proceeding. Shahada's next question. And this is the date, October 19th, 2015. Yes. And the gray is from Jane. Yes. And is the blue your text? Yes. And can you read the first two texts? New. Keep these. And following that, did Jane send you a series of photographs? Yes. And I just showed you the last page, page 8 of Government Exhibit 205F. Does the text I am pointing to here indicating that it says save these? Yes. What did you understand her to be referring to? For me to save the photos. Now, in your communications with Jane in 2015, I think, withdrawn, you testified earlier you had communication with Jane using multiple numbers. Is that right? Yes. Meaning Jane used different numbers. Is that right? Yes. And did you have any understanding of why her numbers were changing? Objection. Sustain. What, if anything, excuse me, just one moment. What, if anything, did Jane tell you about why her numbers were changing? Objection. Sustained. Showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 205G. Are these again texts from Jane? Yes. And your texts are in blue and Jane's texts are in gray? Yes. Can you read what you asked Jane that I am pointing to here? And then it has indicating, which means she's pointing to a particular spot on the text message. Oh, I see. You be recording your own music or no? And did you text Jane that? I texted her that because my understanding was she meeting with R. Kelly to like advance her music career. And when was it that you gained that understanding? When she first left? Before she left? Yeah. And can you now read her response to that question from you? She said, no, but he has me singing seductive songs, kind of like, I'm sorry, just read. Word for word? Yes, word for word. Okay. Nah, but he be having me singing and shit. Seductive songs, kinda like Aaliyah and shit. And he gave me songs to learn, so when I do get into the studio, I just ace it. But I'm gonna sleep. Love you. Now, you testified earlier that your communications with Jane gradually began to subside. Is that right? Correct. And what, if any, concerns did you have at this point? Object as to relevance, sustain as to form. Okay, when your communications gradually subsided, did you still try to communicate with Jane? I did. I'm showing you what's in evidence as Government's Exhibit 205H. Are these all texts from you to Jane? Yes. And I'll start with the first one on October 29, 2015. Does it state, hey boo, I hope you're doing okay. Hit me when you can, love. Yes. And then, did you text Jane again on November 2nd, 2015? Baby, hit me whenever you can, okay? I'm worried about you, ho. Yes. And by the way, was that ho? Was that just a term you and your friends used in high school? Yeah, I wasn't insulting her or anything. And no response to those two texts, correct? Correct. And then you followed that up with the text on November 6, 2015. Yes. Saying, you need to answer me. Yes. And then again, November 8th, 2015, what did you write there? Could you read what you wrote? I said, I really hope you're doing okay. I'll be mad as shit if you don't say happy birthday. But I know you're probably busy. Just call me when you can. Me and Maya are worried about you, babes. I love you so much. And November 8th, does that day have any significance to you? That's my birthday. And the Maya referred to here, who is that? Jemiah Coates. And then again, no response to that text? Correct. And then on November 11, 2015, did you write Jane a text again saying, baby, we so worried about you? Yes. With some crying emojis? Yes. Why were you concerned? Canic. Objection. Donnelly. Overruled. I was concerned because I wasn't hearing from her, and I was concerned for her safety and her whereabouts. And prior to Jane leaving Orlando, was she someone you had been in communication with daily? Yes. Was she one of your best friends? Yes. Now I am showing you Government Exhibits 205H again. That last text from you is from November 11, 2015, right? Yes. I'm now showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 205A. I'm sorry, 205I. Are these texts from Jane? Yes, ma'am. And is the first text, are these all texts from November 14, 2015? Yes. And was that the next time you recall hearing from her? Yes, yes. I'm showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 205J. Again, are these texts between you and Jane? Yes. And your texts are in blue and Jane's are in gray. Yes. Now, there's a photo where I'm pointing. Do you know what this is? It's a video. And do you see someone's face on the video? Yeah, that's Jamia. And do you recall what this video was that you sent Jane? Yeah, it was a video of Jamia and I in the lunchroom where Jane and us used to hang out. And why did you send that to Jane? Oh, it was just to say hello and kind of remind her of things that we used to do. And then LMAOOO, what does that mean? Just like laughing my ass off. All right, and then is there a response from Jane that I'm pointing to here? Yes, and what does that say? It says, you know, y'all can't do that because he checks my phone. Who did you understand her to be referring to when she said he checks my phone? I understand her to be referring to R. Kelly. I'm turning to the second page of the exhibit. Is that your response saying, what the video? Yes, ma'am. And do you then say, what he gonna say if he sees the video? Yes. Why are you asking that? Objection. Overruled. I'm sorry. Can you repeat it? Sure. What made you ask in the text message? Oh, because I was wondering why I shouldn't send her a video. And how did she respond? What did she say? What did she write? She said, he's going to be like, why is that your best friend when you said you'd be texting your cousin? And who did you understand Jane to be referring to when she used the term your cousin? Myself. Okay, are you and Jane cousins? No, we're not. And what, if anything, did you understand her to mean by this text? That to R. Kelly's knowledge, I am her cousin and Jamia is her best friend. And that's, okay, well, was that something had you discussed with Jane before? Yes. And you respond, oh, I see. Yes, ma'am. And then there's a response from Jane. Yes. And I think the full response is on the next page. I'll just turn to that. You can read out what's written here. I just don't want to have to block your number because he thinks I'm being immature. That's why I deleted apps and everyone's number, because I got to show some age now that I'm with a 43-year-old. So doing so has made me grow out of a lot of young habits. Just don't want to ruin the one shot I have at being able to talk to you. I love you. And what did you understand Jane to mean when she said she didn't want to ruin the one shot she had of being able to talk to you? Objection. Overruled. I understood that I guess it was hard for her to be able to have communication with us. And if I didn't uphold the fact that I'm her cousin and her friend and we're not supposed to know each other, it would ruin her chance to be able to speak with me. I'm showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 205K. Are these again texts between you and Jane? These ones are from December 28th, 2015. Yes. And the gray is Jane and the blue is you. Yes. And Jane asked you how your Christmas was. Yes. And indicating her birthday is in 2 days. Yes. And did you then ask her what she got for Christmas using a term from your hubby? Yes. Yes, ma'am. Who are you referring to? I was referring to R. Kelly. And did she then tell you the gift she had gotten from him? Yes. I'm showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 205M. Are these again texts between you and Jane? Yes. And the blue is you and the gray is Jane? Yes. Actually, I'm sorry. Can we show this to the jury only, please? Now, I'd like to direct your attention to the text from January 8, 2016 at 11:18 a.m. Are those texts in blue from you to Jane? Yes. And what I'm pointing to here, those two letters, is that an abbreviation for Jane's name? Yes, it is. And when you wrote, may I always be like abbreviation for James' name, texted me and I be salty, where were you referring to there? What were you referring to there? I was saying that Maya always tells me that Jane texts her and she hasn't been texting me and that I feel upset because of that. And did Jane then respond to your text? Yes. And she wrote, miss you too. And could you don't know how to play stuff yet? Yes. Don't know how to play stuff yet? Yes. And then it continues here. Yes. And among the things you wrote was texting. You will get me caught up. Yes. Just like now, if I was with him and you mentioned Mia's name, that would start some shit. You gotta learn how to use code, baby G. Yes. Baby G, what does that mean? Baby girl. And the him in these texts, who did you understand that to be referring to? To R. Kelly. And did you respond to these texts, to her text in blue here? Yes. And among the things you wrote was, How would that start shit? Don't he know we all friends? Uh-huh. Is that a yes? Yes. And did you write, what did you write below that? I said, even though you're my cousin, doesn't mean we can't associate with the same people. Laughing emoji. And what were you conveying in these texts? I was still confused about why I had to hide the fact that I knew Jamia. And is this what I'm pointing to here? This text from January 8th, 2016, is that a response from Jane? Yes. And where it says in here, he thinks y'all don't know each other and he don't want me texting her because he knows she's my BFF and thinks I will tell you everything I see. This what I mean. You don't know how to put two and two together. Yes. And then you responded, you never told me he don't know me, don't know we all know each other. Yes. And after receiving these texts, were you confused? Yes. Why were you confused? I was confused because, like I said, I just didn't understand why I had to hide the fact that her and I and Jamil were all friends. Donnelly, Miss Shahada, I have gone about 15 minutes over our afternoon break, and I'd like to give our jurors a little bit of a break. Is this a good stopping point? Sure. Sorry about that. All right, we're just going to be in recess about 10 minutes. Please don't talk about the case, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, everybody can sit down and can take the witness out. We'll see you in just a few minutes. I'm going to ask my standard, do you know about how much longer you have? 10 or 15 minutes. And Mr. Canick, is this your witness? I'm sorry? Is this your witness? Yes. Do you know about ballpark what you've got? No more than 15 minutes. Okay. So we'll maybe have time for another witness? Yes. Okay, great. All right. So I'll see you in about 10 minutes. So the recess is taken, and then in open court outside the presence of the jury. All right. Let's get the witness back. Witness resumes the stand, and let's get the jury, please. Jury enters. All right, folks, we're ready to resume with the direct examination of the witness. Go ahead. And then the witness is reminded that she's still under oath. And then the witness, yes, okay. And the witness is Azriel's friend, Malak, don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Okay. So then Shahada resumes. Now, before the break, you were testifying about various text message exchanges between you and Jane, correct? Yes. From 2015 and early 2016, correct? Yes. And what kind of phone did you have at that time? What brand of phone? An iPhone. Is that an Apple product? Yes, it is. Now, you testified earlier that in addition to text message communications with Jane, you also communicated with her by phone call and FaceTime in 2015 and 2016, right? Yes. And can you explain what is FaceTime? It's like a video chat. And in any of your FaceTimes with Jane in 2015 or 2016, was R. Kelly present for any of those? No. Have you ever met R. Kelly? No. Are you familiar with the name Juice? Yeah. What, if anything, did Jane tell you about Juice? Objection. Overruled. She told me that she was somebody that was there with her through all of her time with R. Kelly. Did she tell you anything else? Yes. Wait, I done got my voices mixed up, y'all. Yo, buddy. So, Malak replied, she told me that she was somebody that was there with her through all her time with R. Kelly. Did she tell you anything else? Yeah, she said that, like, in the beginning when she first went, that Juice, like, was supposed to, like, teach her how to please her and him. Now, you testified earlier that at some point Jane sent you photographs and asked you to save them. Is that right? Yes. I'm going to show the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 254A through K. Okay. May we approach, Your Honor? Can we don't have any objection to them being turned into evidence. Okay, turn on your microphone for me. You have no objection? No objection. Okay, they're in evidence. The government exhibits 254A through 254K, so marked. And I'm just going to show you. May I approach, Your Honor? I want to make sure she knows what I've got. Sure. Just take a look at them. Are these photographs you received from Jane on your cell phone? Yes. And what, if anything, did you do with the photographs after you received them? I had saved them on my phone. And did you save them anywhere else? No, they're on my phone. All right. I'm showing you 254A. Who's in this photo? Jane. I'm showing you 254B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and K. Now, other than saving the police photographs, did Jane ask you to do anything else with them? She wanted me to keep them safe for her in case she needed them in the future. And what did you understand her to mean by that? Objection. Sustained. Did you receive texts and phone calls from Jane from different phone numbers? Yes. In 2015 and 2016? Yes. Now, when you receive phone calls or FaceTime calls from Jane, as a general matter, around what time of day would you receive these calls? Generally later at night or early in the morning. And what do you mean by that, later at night or early in the morning? Like, I really wouldn't talk to her throughout the day. It would just be like at one time of the day, either early or really late. Now, after you lost contact or after I think you testified earlier, the communications with Jane at some point stopped. Is that right? Yes. And after your communications with Jane stopped, or let me ask you this. Around how old were you when your communications with Jane stopped? I was like 16. And after your communications with Jane stopped, did you make any reports to law enforcement about Jane? No. And why didn't you do that? Honestly, I just didn't really want to get involved in what she was doing. And why didn't you want to get involved? Objection. Overruled. You can answer. Actually, can I just see the lawyers at the side with the court reporter for just a second? The following occurred at sidebar. What she's going to say, Shahida, she was scared to get involved. What's the relevance of that? And that's Kanik. And then Donnelly, I think she just didn't want to get involved. Shahida, but it's left with the impression that the last thing she said was, I didn't want to get involved in what she was doing. I think that leaves a misleading impression to the jury. Kanik, you asked the question, Shahada, and I followed up. Donnelly, thank you, Your Honor, she did. Lord Jesus. And then Kanik, Judge, you're beating me mercilessly. Donnelly, I just did not know or should have known, should have asked her to answer. The fact that she was scared, maybe she's scared of him. Shahada, well, she was scared. He was a high-profile person. She was scared of him. Donnelly, she can say she didn't want to get involved because of the high-profile nature. That's basically the whole. Then Kanik cut her off. Your Honor, I don't see the relevance of her state of mind at all, but if you are going to allow it, I think this is certainly not trying to step into their shoes, but I think that, and then Donnelly cut him off, let's leave it alone. It's really not relevant that she was scared. It really isn't, and it's prejudicial. So let's take a long view. It's all good. It's just tell you to move on to something else, and it will look like I kept you from doing it. End of sidebar. Continued on next page. And scroll down. Okay, then Donnelly. All right, I think it's best to move on to something else. Shahada, one moment, Your Honor. Sure. There's a pause in the proceedings. No further questions. Donnelly, okay. Cross-examination. Kanik, very briefly, Your Honor. So then on the cross-examination, Kanik asks, the text messages that you received from Jane. Donnelly, your microphone, is it on? Kanik, yes. Donnelly, okay. The text messages that you received from Jane, you don't know the truth of it at all, correct? You don't know if they were true or not. I don't know. Right. I mean, you received them. You know that what she was telling you was the actual truth, right? I don't know. You just received it from her and you responded, yes. Now, you were asked a short while ago about what time you would get calls from or communication from Jane, and you mentioned that it would be either early in the morning or late at night. Do you remember telling us that? Yes, I do. Now, you in school at that time, am I correct? Yes. And your school hours were during the middle of the day, am I correct? To late afternoon. Correct. So when you were available, that could be very early in the morning or late at night, am I correct? No. Well, what time would you get home from school? Well, I have my phone on me all day. If somebody's wanting to communicate with me, I'll communicate with them, especially if it was her. But you know that she would sleep, go to bed, basically during the day. Am I correct? Shahida, objection. Donnelly, sustain. There was a text between you and her that was read a short while ago. And at the bottom of that text, it says, I'm sleeping. Remember seeing that? Yes, she said she was sleeping. Or someone said, I'm going to bed. Yes, you remember seeing that, right? I don't remember which one exactly, but you remember seeing it. Objection. Did you see that text? I believe so. Can we show her the text messages again? I'm going to show you what's been admitted into evidence as 205J. Can you read the bottom of that? Laugh out loud. I'm just watching TV, about to sleep. What time is that? It's not listed what time. What time is that? 3:14 p.m. Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor. Okay, any redirect? No, Your Honor. All right. Thank you very much. You can step down. Whew, child, we done finally got through the Ariel testimony and then her friend Malak, which really added no value that I could find, like why they needed her there, other than to share these text messages that really served no purpose either. It seemed to me that the government was trying to show that Ariel was lying, but she was lying at the benefit of R. Kelly. And then the government was showing that she was just a liar, period. And she told so many different stories and so many contradictions that you can't believe anything that she says. Because her stories were like all over the place. Like she was blaming the parents. She was blaming R. Kelly. She was blaming everybody, taking no accountability for what she was doing. And it just seemed to me that R. Kelly just would be too busy to be trying to tell people what to write in letters, who was writing letters, who they were sending letters to. Like, were they emailing the letters? Were they mailing the letters? Was he ever going back to verify any of the stuff in the letters? It was just too much for a man who is writing music, who is traveling, who's going concert to concert to concert to concert, because he was very busy in 2015 and 2016 and 2017. He didn't have time to be monitoring these letters and telling people to write these letters. And then I go back to why in God's creation would his former attorney, who happens to be deceased, who has died, who can't be questioned about the validity of these statements, why would any attorney who had just gotten their client off on a child pornography case, why in the world would, and let me strike that, let me erase that off the record, who had just gotten off on CP, would tell his client, in the event you find yourself in this situation again, have your girlfriends and people around you write these letters defending you. No attorney in his right mind would advise his client to commit a crime. If I had just spent the last 6 years with this client, getting this client off on these allegations about CP, I would say to my client, thank God we won this case. Please mind your manners. Please leave these young ass women alone. Find you a grown woman that you can build a life with. But whatever you do, Do not mess with these women. Make sure that the people that you get involved with going forward are 18 and over. Ask them for identification if you have to. Be very sure that the people you're dealing with are of age. I would not tell my client, in the event you continue to mess with, or you happen to mess with underage women or underage girls, then make sure you create evidence that will exonerate you if 12, 13 years from now you happen to find yourself back in court on similar allegations. Oh my God, this is crazy. And I hope the jury has common sense enough to see through this nonsense. So, the Judge Donnelly still hasn't ruled whether or not she is going to impeach a portion of Azriel's testimony. And as I explained to you all in a previous video, all impeachment means in a federal case is that she is going to give instructions to the jury when they get ready to deliberate that they can exclude, strike, not deal with, not even pay attention to all of or certain portions of this witness's testimony referring to Azriel Clary. If they choose to consider Azriel's testimony, they still can, even under impeachment. Impeachment just means that evidence has been permitted that would indicate that this person was not telling the truth, was not trustworthy, and that you can strike that from consideration. Now, the rules are different in state court as to what impeachment means, and I read that to you all in a prior video. But in federal court, it just means that you don't have to pay attention to the testimony from this witness because it may not be truthful. So guys, that is it for me. I am going to end this here. And so go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.